Good afternoon. Welcome to this session. I'm not sure how many we have in the audience for this session. Your different backgrounds, I'm sure, all related to public education. My name is Daniel King. 2 years ago, I retired after a 42-year career in public education. 37 of those years spent in leadership positions. I had the timing, I guess, to retire right before a few months before the pandemic hit. So I have not had some of the experiences that you are having today. But I did have the fortune of having the experience of working with teams in 2 different districts to lead and take districts from low performance, struggling districts, one in particular district in tremendous crisis, and move towards significant improvement and a lot of success. And I think some of that experience can be relevant here. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today, I know that there's a tremendous concern about learning loss, about the remediation, about students falling behind during this past year and a half, and even coming up to this school year where there's a lot of uncertainty about in-person versus distance learning, about students returning. There's an increase in homeschooling. There's all kinds of challenges. But I want to talk to you about the main strategy I used to work with a district that was in tremendous crisis, that was not connecting with students in many ways, that was losing students for all kinds of different reasons. And that was through expanding dual enrollment and early college, and really building that up. It's very important. Right now during the pandemic, college enrollment, particularly in community colleges, has dropped. Texas already has ranked low in college completion. The pandemic is only making this worse. For the sake of our communities, our children, our state, it's important that we overcome this. Even before the pandemic, the Houston Endowment, for example, showed that only 1 in 5 Texas students were earning a higher education credential within 11 years after entering the 8th grade, or by about age 25. Steve Murdoch, once the census director for the U.S., demographer at Rice University, has been doing studies for several decades showing that our educational outcomes are going to become more challenging and worse as our state demographics change unless we do things different. We can't keep doing what we've always done. And I think in today's world, that's even more apparent. Dual enrollment. Dual enrollment is not anything new. Dual enrollment was something that existed in a very small way in the 1980s, 1990s, maybe even somewhat before, but it was primarily targeting the very top students, the students that the high schools didn't have anything left for them anymore. Go ahead and get them started on college because they'd already finished all their high school credits. But that began to change in this century. After 2000, and a number of studies show that taking college classes while in high school is transformational. And you see a list there of who has conducted some of these studies. There were many of them, and I think the data is more well known today than when I was beginning this work. Dual enrollment students, their educational attainment is above the average. They graduate at a higher rate. They're twice as likely to enroll in college after high school, twice as likely to enroll in a 4-year college, and they're twice as likely to remain in college. Dual enrollment students, they're much more likely to graduate from college within 6 years after their high school graduation. They're 75% more likely overall to ultimately graduate from college. What's interesting is, like I said, dual enrollment started as something for some of the top students to do during their last year or two in high school. But what's been found now is that the positive impact of dual enrollment is even more dramatic for minority students, for males, for low-income students, for first-generation college enrollees, and for students with lower GPAs. And it makes sense. Why is this true? That top student that used to be the only ones that would take college courses while in high school, they were already going to go to college. They were already very likely to increase college. So while it was good for them, it wasn't life-changing. For many other students, it is life-changing. Early college high school is a whole different spin on dual enrollment, and it's pretty commonly known now, although its implementation is still not common enough. But there are early college high schools all over the state of Texas and all over the nation. But early college high school, I call it dual enrollment on steroids, and it's a real game changer because it's talking about high school being completely designed to support dual enrollment, to support students not only beginning college but completing college. And a few years ago, this has probably increased since then, 30% of students in early college high schools were completing an associate degree or the equivalent while they were in high school. Here in Texas, early college high schools, some of them, 80% or more of their students earn an associate degree. Early college high schools, almost all students in an early college high school earn college hours, compared to less than 10% of your typical high school students. And graduation rates of students participating in early college high school are improved. Again, early college high school, even more than dual enrollment, students are more likely to enter college, persist, have higher GPAs, and have better graduation rates. And what's interesting, again, is that the positive impact is even greater for students who enter high school performing below grade level. It makes a difference when students start getting the support, start seeing themselves as possible college students, when they're treated as if they're possible college students, and preparation for enrolling in college courses while in high school begins. Again, very powerful for minority students, low-income youth, first-generation college goers. Going back to Steve Murdoch's studies that show that the demographics of Texas and the U.S. as a whole, especially Southwestern United States, is changing dramatically. And if we don't change educational outcomes for those who have historically not been served well by the education system, that we will begin to go backwards. But early college high school has proven that demography doesn't have to be destiny. We just need to do things different and serve our students differently. So one of the things that I engaged in Farso and Alamo ISD, and even before that in the Hidalgo ISD, the difference is Hidalgo is a small district, about 3,000 students, had about 800 students in the high school at the time. I think they have about 1,000 today. And that was transforming the whole system, where the whole system is designed to support early college work. And so there in Hidalgo, we converted the entire high school into an early college high school beginning in 2006. When I entered PSJA somewhat later, much larger system, over 30,000 students, 9,000 students in high school, facing tremendous challenges, very high dropout rate. The original high school in the district being ready to be shut down for low performance, gangs dominating the high school culture, a lot of other issues, governance issues. Scaling early college high school became a game changer in PSJ. We made a determination there that history and demographics would not be our destiny, and that PSJ students would outperform the state and national average in terms of college completion. So we went from looking at a huge dropout issue to looking at really changing the game in terms of college completion. For those who may not be familiar, probably most are, but PSJA is in the Rio Grande Valley. It's almost entirely Hispanic student population, almost entirely economically disadvantaged, and a very large English language learner population. And so, like I said, located there here in the lower Rio Grande Valley. Our district-wide scale-up actually started in a very unique way in Farso and Alamo. In Hidalgo, we actually started with school-wide early college high school, beginning with an entering freshman class. There were about 200 students in each grade level. In PSJ, we actually started by creating a dual enrollment high school for dropouts, ages 18 to 26, back in 2007, in partnership with South Texas College. This school was called the College Career and Technology Academy. And so we brought back in dropouts back into school, engaged them in dual enrollment, put them on a career path. And that really sparked the questions around the rest of the district and the community. In all honesty, quite controversial initially. Why are you making dual enrollment available for dropouts? Why isn't it available for my students that are doing what they're supposed to be doing at the regular high schools? And that was a good question to be asked. The following year, in 2008, in partnership with the Gates Foundation and South Texas College, we opened a standalone STEM Early College High School, Thomas Jefferson T-STEM Early College High School. But when we opened it, we did something different than what had been done before. We stated from day one that this was basically a pilot. It was a laboratory setting where we were going to learn how to do early college high school so that we could then transplant that into every high school in the district, in our large comprehensive high schools of 2,000 plus students, and work to serve every student. As that got underway and began to show success, by 2010, we began opening school within a school, which was a brand new concept at that time. We began opening schools within a school in our large comprehensive high schools. Cohorts of entering freshmen, eighth graders would apply and be selected by lottery to be within a school. And then beginning in 2014, we began scaling those school within a school concepts within each of our large high schools. We began scaling them from 25% of the entering freshman class to 50%, the next year 75%, until we got to the point of taking on the challenge of serving 100% of each entering class in an early college setting. From 2018 on in PSJ, all 4 comprehensive high schools and our several special purpose high schools became wall-to-wall early college high school. So all 9,000 plus high school students were in high schools where the expectation was meeting their needs through dual enrollment through early college setting. We began focusing on to and through, not only on college access and dual enrollment, but on college completion. And so we focused our entire school district at the secondary level around building career pathways to and through post-secondary completion. A lot of the legislation that's come about in the last 6 to 8 years, House Bill 1 and so forth, CCMR, a lot of this was built around, in a great deal around PSJ's work in tying together CTE and early college work and career pathways for all of the students. Our district-wide pathways were aligned to the degree plans and certification programs in our area colleges and universities. And we created specialized programs clustered at various high schools. Really, all of our high schools worked in tandem, where we came to the point where we were busing, transporting teachers from campus to campus to serve students, and transporting students from campus to campus to be able to get into whatever programs they needed or wanted for their degree program. And so it actually brought a lot of unity back to the district, because we had gone from a one high school district to a multi-high school district, but now all high schools were working together to the same end. How can all of us together serve the 9,000 students? So students can be served in any setting, at any campus. We can share teachers, we can share students, we created a special academies campus to work with all the students from all the high schools in some of the unique programs. Going back to the beginning, I mentioned, and I'm going to bring this up, and I thought about this, but right now as we're coming back through the pandemic, a big question is, how many students have we lost? How many of your students have been missing during this last year and a half? How many have gone missing? How many are we going to be wondering where they are when school starts? How many will be engaged either in person or remotely? How many will be minimally engaged? Well, we faced that problem when I arrived in PSJ in 2007, not because of the pandemic, but because of dysfunctionality, where the dropout rate was very high. And so the dropout rate prior in 2006, the longitudinal dropout rate in PSJ was close to 20%. It was more than double the state average. It was way above the regional average. And I'm not going to go in detail about our initiatives, but there's citations in this PowerPoint where you can read if you're not familiar. But we began an initiative, Countdown to Zero, with the idea that the only acceptable number of missing students is 0. And that's a pretty big challenge to take on. And I know that's a challenge that many of you will be facing this fall. But we took on that challenge when we had, like I said, a dropout rate that was more than double the state average. Within 2 years, our dropout rate was better than the state average, better than the regional average. And we drove it down to the point where year after year and continuously since then, the dropout rate in PSJ has been less than half and often even approaching only a third of the state average. So that was a tremendous turnaround by paying attention to every student, by engaging them in meaningful pathways, by trying to connect them to college for a certificate or a degree, by letting them know what their future could hold, and by taking that sincerely. Similarly, our graduation rates, which again can be affected again by the pandemic in PSJ, they were very bad and they were getting worse. In 2007, they had plummeted to 62% of entering freshmen graduating on time. And so again, we began digging in and working on that, and also working on getting students a focus on a career, on a pathway, on early college, on dual enrollment. And within a matter of about 3 years, we surpassed the state average in terms of graduation rate. And over the years, we drove that up to consistently above 90%, where it's continued to this day, and where it continues to lead the state and lead our region. Jobs for the future, and you can, on the right of this, and I know the slides will be available to you, a number of articles, and yes, they're somewhat dated, but they go in a lot of depth. There's one, the third one there, Connecting Every Student to a Meaningful Future by IDRA, where they came in and studied our work. How are you having that impact on students? Well, connecting every student to a meaningful future is important. Everyone needs meaning for their life. Everyone needs hope. And so Jobs for the Future called our work an effective design worthy of replication throughout Texas and nationally. And the state legislature passed several bills encouraging replication of the design. Over there on the left in red, I have a question mark for you, the new pandemic dropout crisis. And, what kind of efforts it's going to take to really dig in and identify and serve those students who, have really fallen off track during this pandemic because we didn't have the facility, the capacity to serve them well. And again, going back, it's maybe different, but when I arrived in PSJ in 2007, that district did not have the capacity, the facility, the intentionality to serve struggling students well, and as a result was losing many of those. Based on that early work, the dual enrollment high school for dropouts, based on the STEM early college high school, based on starting the school within a school and beginning to scale, the state of Texas began to take notice, and the Texas Education Agency and the governor's office, we got a call, and they wanted to honor honor this work and put their energy behind it. And so they came to the district and gave us basically an unsolicited grant of over $1 million, and basically declared the district a state model or demonstration site for district-wide college readiness, for taking on the challenge that every student should be ready and connected. Today, CCMR has a similar connotation of every student being ready for a future with the skills and educational preparation to be successful. And so the goal of the project was to demonstrate how a district can adapt the lessons of its early college and T-STEM school initiatives and scale a portfolio of school designs and a common instructional program that enables all students to graduate college ready with a minimum of 12 college level credits. So like I said, we worked with our comprehensive high schools, with our dropout recovery high school. We created an early college high school for teenage mothers who, those who chose to be served and educated in a separate setting. They had a choice of their comprehensive high school or a setting that focused on the needs of teenage moms. To do this, we had to think of how can we support this at such a massive scale. And so we began to build a comprehensive approach to college advising. So in the center there, you can see our student success team, and it consisted of a number of components. If you look at the top of the diagram, one of the things that we did is we partnered with South Texas College to have every one of our high school counselors certified as college advisors through the National Association of College Advisors. And so South Texas College worked with us, and we did that over several years. We took cohorts of counselors each year until 100% of our high school counselors were certified as college advisors, so that they were very, very knowledgeable on college and college degree planning. Within our high schools, we had early college directors that were over different pathways and cohorts of students. And we had faculty advisor training for our dual enrollment, our early college faculty. We had to train our high school, we created a position, financial aid officer at each comprehensive high school, and one to be shared by the others to work with the students on their financial aid. We created, partly funded initially by the grant that we got from the governor's office and the Texas Education Agency. Later, we had to fund it ourselves when the grant ran out. We created a unique position, the PSJA College Transition Specialists. The transition specialists were advisors with an advising or counseling background whose job it was to help students get through the summer melt, get through the gap between the senior year and college entrance. They began working with our seniors together with the counselors, with our high school seniors. They stayed focused on these students over the summer, making sure they got enrolled in the colleges. And then we were very fortunate that South Texas College and the University of Texas, today RGV, back then University of Texas Pan American, provided offices at their campuses for our transition specialists. And so they would continue to work with our students, especially during their freshman year in college, to make sure that they had support and had someone that was really paying attention to them. And then if you go on around, you see our college readiness and CTE departments. Ultimately, we merged and blended those, and CTE became a part of our college readiness department. I had sort of a motto or a mantra there in PSJ that I used to tell the staff, and that was every student a CTE student, every CTE program a college program. And so our goal was that every CTE program should be connected to our colleges and should be for dual credit, either leading towards certificates, associate degrees, or both. And then our primary partner, South Texas College, as dual enrollment began to scale in early college high school work, because as we scaled in PSJ, the scaling began the early college concept began to accelerate in school districts all around us. And so South Texas College became really a leader in early college work and dual enrollment work. And so they created an office of high school programs and services to work with us. I'm not going to read through all of this, but we created a college advising model where we're very specific from 8th grade all the way through and into college of what were the activities, what were the supports that the students should be getting at each grade level, the experiences, the supports, and the activities. And there across the bottom, who would be responsible for doing that? So beginning in 8th grade, where we provided a college success class, and where students studied and learned about the different pathways and began making their selection and began some TSI preparation. So that was something that the middle school and high school counselors together partnered on. And then all the way through year by year, as in 9th grade, where they began determining what CCMR would mean to them, and began TSI testing. In 10th grade, where they began solidifying their degree plan, and by 11th grade had their commitment for their degree plan. Our goal was that for every student to graduate with some form of CCMR and with a plan for what they were going to do next, and a plan that they could act on. So at each grade level, you can see who were the partners there at the bottom in making sure that those activities happen and were supported. Degree planning became very important. So by the sophomore year, our students needed their degree plan. They would access their degree portal and begin looking and planning and working towards their certificate, their degree, whatever it was that they were beginning to work towards. And then you can see the transition to post-secondary. And the onboarding program, that was very intensive partnership between the colleges and our transition counselors were the key liaisons. The regular counselors were involved, but the transition specialists were the key liaison between our high school counseling department and the college advising department at the college and university. We even had a position for a virtual transitional specialist whose job it was to support all the students who were leaving the region to go to college, to go to UT Austin or go out of state, go to Stanford or Harvard or Yale. So we created a virtual setting for supporting those students where they could reach back to their transition specialists, and the transition specialists could be reaching out to them and making sure that they were receiving the support that they needed. And there's a little bit more on the transition specialist. Like I said, a very unique position that we created there that some others have gone on and worked with SIN, but there is their kind of their job role, during the student senior year in high school, what they're involved in, during the transition summer, and then the freshman year in college, what their role was in interacting with our graduates that were in college, and those who had not yet enrolled also, and then with continuing students. And so that was a big help. The results of the scale up were tremendous. First of all, you saw we had more students graduating from high school than ever before. We went from the class of 2007 that had not even 1,000 high school graduates to having over 2,000 a year high school graduates on an annual basis because of the decrease in dropouts and because of the on-time graduation and some growth, but mostly reducing the dropout rate. The class of 2017, you can see as an example, 2,051 graduates. 70% of those graduates had college hours, which is a remarkable achievement. Today, it's up even higher there in PSJA the last couple of years. It's been moving up to the range of 80%. Half the graduates, over 1,000 students, had at least a semester of college under their belt. Close to a third had at least a year under their belt. And you can see there at the end, 25% had either an associate degree or a certificate from the community college. Actually, I think in PSJA, the class of 2020, just a few months after my departure from the district, they announced that I think over 500 students had an associate degree. So pushing to the point where 25, 30% and so forth of the students could earn an associate degree while in high school. And most students having completed some college hours. Associate degrees in a great variety of areas. So this is the class of 2017 and some of the fields that they got an associate degree. I run into, to this day, I still run into students and their parents that come up and think. I just ran into a parent last week whose son is finishing medical school, is in their final year of residency actually this coming year, and said, my son can't wait to meet you. He keeps saying he wants to thank you. This was actually a student from Hidalgo ISD, but in terms of saying that he finished college 2 years early, and that's allowing him to finish medical school at a young age, and relatively young age. All the variety of certificates here that were earned by students in the class of 2017. So all kinds of career pathways based on their interests and what they want to work in. Our motto there in PSJ was, our message to our students was, start college now, complete early, and go far. Go as far as you can. And just so many examples of that. I ran into a 23-year-old young lady at Texas A&M. She was at dissertation phase already on her PhD because of finishing in 2 years. We had a student, ran into a student or a parent whose daughter was entering law school at age 20. So that's what we mean by complete early and go far. And have a lot less debt too. You hear the national debate on how much debt students have today in college. So early college, high school makes college so much more affordable for them. So kind of recommendations, and again, like I said, I think this is even more relevant with the pandemic. I think another thing that I think of is that acceleration works better than remediation, and we can do two things at once. And so I kind of urge everyone, to keep moving students forward and focusing on how far they can go and where they can be and what they can do with their lives, and engaging them in a meaningful future. But we need to continue to move from the current emphasis on standardized tests and really emphasize post-secondary completion, workforce readiness. We need to think about our college courses as well. I know more and more studies are coming out with a concern, are we building the right skills into our college courses? And that's very important. Sometimes when I get asked the question, are the skills more important? Let's say welding. Are the skills and the certificate more important, or is the college hours more important? And my answer is both. It's not either or. Why not do both? Because both provides more options to our students. We need to continue to support dual enrollment and the scale up of early college high schools. Texas has become really the leader in this nationwide, and we need to keep pushing that. We need to look for solutions to costly textbooks. We need to go more to open source textbooks to make it affordable for the students and the schools. Thank goodness we've already overcome some of the challenges. When we began this work in PSJ, one of the challenges was that there was no funding for transportation of students to colleges. And we pushed TEA, and ultimately they made a ruling that the same funding that has been around for years to bus students to a site for CTE because of equipment and so forth that can't be moved around easily, that same funding is available for transporting students to a different site to be able to take college courses that are not offered at the geographical location where they're getting their other schooling. So we took huge advantage of that. over the last few years in PSJA once we got the favorable ruling from TA on that. Not everyone is, I find that even today, not everyone is aware that that funding is available. And that funding is actually better than your regular transportation funding because it's actually on your cost per mile and not on the linear density formulas that that transportation typically has followed. An area that still needs a lot of work, and I do some work right now with a data firm, and I failed to mention at the beginning. You see the logo there: leadership, innovation, transformation in each slide. After leaving the public school arena, I've established my own consulting firm, and leadership, innovation, transformation is my firm, and I'm currently supporting a number of organizations. And one of the key areas of interest is that we don't share data well enough between college and high schools, real-time data, especially with early college work, dual enrollment, the data that's needed to transition students. Also a focus on multiple measures for college admission, not just a standardized test. That's even more important. I know I was talking to several colleges in the last few months, and they mentioned the plummet of TSI scores right now with students based on the pandemic effect. Well, we need different ways to measure readiness and not just a test score, so multiple measures. One of the things that made us successful and enabled us to scale on PSJ is that we shared equipment and facilities between our schools and the colleges. And sometimes we provided space, not only space, but equipment for them, and vice versa. We shared spaces, we shared equipment. We allowed them to bring their traditional college students into our spaces and use our equipment, and vice versa. Another area that still needs work is improving the transferability of college credits, especially from community colleges to four-year institutions. Supporting the scale up of dual enrollment and the early college initiative in Texas will be a real game changer. We need to make sure that that we don't go backwards on this as we're recovering from the pandemic. I know that one opportunity that exists is I know that school districts are getting ESSER funding, and this may be one way to use some of that. One way to, and I know the ESSER funding is intended to offset the impact of the pandemic in many ways, and so the pandemic has impacted negatively the percent of students enrolling in college, especially those who typically would go to a community college. And so using the ESSER funding to address this through dual enrollment, through early college, high school is very important. There's no other strategy that has shown as much potential. If you go back to one of the first slides where I mentioned that the Houston Endowment found a few years back that only 1 in 5 Texas students had completed a certificate or an associate degree by age 25. And by the way, I didn't have all the data on that slide. If you go deeper into that research, only 11% of Latino students and African-American students had completed an associate degree or certificate by age 25. And only 8% of Latino males and African-American males had completed a college degree, at least an associate's degree or certificate, by age 25. And if you look at PSJ, a student comprised almost entirely of low-income Hispanic students, and see where they're at the point where 25% of their student body is achieving that in effect by age 18. completely blowing up the expectations of what these students can achieve, then, like I said, I think it's that's why I say that no other strategy has shown as much potential. And certainly Texas is the leader. You know, Texas often is criticized, and sometimes rightly so, for how much financial support is given to some of the services that the community may need, especially in terms of low-income populations at risk, and so forth. But we have to also give credit where credit is due. No other state has committed to early college, high school enrollment like the state of Texas. No other state has as generous funding where both sides, the college and the high school, are able to draw down full state funding for a student sitting in a dual enrollment class. The college gets their full state funding for that course, and the high school gets their full state funding, or the school district, for that same course. That's not true in any of the other 49 states. And second of all, no other state has committed resources to dropout recovery like Texas has. There's no other state that will fund. In Texas, you can get full ADA funding, full WADA, full weighted ADA funding for students up until their 26th birthday to help them to get their high school diploma. That came out of the work in PSJA that began in 2007, as well as some use of some legislation that had a different intent initially. And no other state provides that. No other state really funds past the age of 21. Again, with the impact of the pandemic, that's something that if you're not deeply engaging in, we should look at, because that's something that for those students who have been let down even further by the system through this pandemic, and through no fault maybe of ours or of the schools or of anybody's, but of just the unexpected, we can continue to work with them. In fact, in this last legislative session, the legislature passed a law expanding a pilot. They had set up a pilot in the Austin area a few years ago for a nonprofit, giving them full WADA funding for working with adults up to the age 50 to achieve a high school diploma. In this last legislative session that just ended, the state has committed to funding 6 more projects of that type around the state over the next few years. So, like I said, whereas in many areas we may be critical of the support that the state may provide in certain areas, in terms of their commitment to the early college, high school work, and their commitment to dropout recovery work and helping young adults in particular who didn't make it through the system, there's no other state that offers more or better funding. So we need to take advantage of that. And of course, you have the ESSER funding on top of that. I'm not sure if there's any other state that provides the funding for transportation to college, from high school to college, for dual enrollment students, the way that Texas does either. So it's very generous in that way. To increase college success, it's time that we move from a system where high-stakes multiple choice tests are the primary focus, and really focus on post-secondary completion. And I think I laud the state for the emphasis the last few years on the CCMR measure. That's very important, and that's really a move of going beyond just a test-centered focus. And I'll conclude with this kind of my philosophy in terms of, years ago, I was an elementary principal back in 1984, back in the years of House Bill 72. So I've been through all the all the iterations of accountability and where it all began and everything. And back in the 80s, it started, you know, the slogan started going around quite a bit around the state. All students can learn. And what does that mean? And so kind of my response to all of this is that high expectations for all students is not a slogan. It's the sum of our daily actions and decisions. What do we mean for all students? Well, I'll give you an example. In PSJA, one of the things I'm proudest of in my last few years there is that we created a dual enrollment program for special needs students, students with Down syndromes and other handicaps. We partnered with the continuing education program of South Texas College and created career pathways for these students, so that when they were in their last years of high school, and as we supported them, those who needed even up to age 21, that we trained them jointly with the college in specific career areas that they got to help choose, areas where they had interests, where they had strengths, and really up their game on job placement and career placement, and really up their game on what does it mean to have high expectations for all students? What does it mean to raise the bar, to raise the ceiling for all students and not put limits on students? And work together with families and their community and their teachers to work with students to help them discover what they can be, what they can dream, what they can do. So I encourage each one of us to look not only at our philosophies and our beliefs, but to look at what we do every day and the decisions we make every day and how those impact students. And I want to thank you very, very, very much for that. I think posted in the chat room is a link to a second study. I had referenced one earlier, but a second study that IDRA did on PSJA a few years ago called College Bound and Determined. And it's very, very in depth about the kind of work and energy and resources put into doing this work of converting all of that. And I see some good hellos from some of you out there that we've worked together, and I'm so excited to see y'all continuing the work. There in the districts that you're in, I see, I think even former student, but I want to thank all of you very much. I want to thank IDRA for their focus on equity and excellence for all students, and I'm very proud to be a part of this and looking at how we can move that forward. And so that's all I have. If anybody has any other questions to post up there, I'd be glad to answer those. And I hope you're having a great great sessions that you're attending. My goodness, former teacher, former students, former coworkers, all posting. That's thank you, all of you, very much. I want to compliment all of you and wish all of you a great school year coming up. Those of you that are still engaged in the most important profession of all, the profession of teaching, of educating, preparing our future. And my prayers will be with you. I know that that you face unique challenges as our students are coming back to school and trying to get everyone re-engaged, and still facing, I know, still facing the unknown in terms of COVID and the impacts that will have over the next few months. Thank you very much.